World Cup season is upon us, and things are slightly different than before, but we're sure it will still give us all the excitement it usually provides. The World Cup has been held for almost 100 years at this point, and with every tournament, more and more records are being broken. However, as more World Cups are held, the harder it gets to actually break records. Some of these records are like superhuman feats of athleticism, while others are so dumb that you wouldn't even want to break them. That's why in this video, we'll be taking a look at World Cup records that might never be broken. So without any further ado, let's dive in. Fastest goal from kickoff. Some of the fastest goals in World Cup history include Clint Dempsey's goal for the US against Ghana in 2014, which was just 30 seconds after the kickoff. English football legend Brian Robson scored within 27 seconds from kickoff against France at the 1982 World Cup, but it's actually not the fastest goal ever in the World Cup. In fact, there were actually 3 goals that were faster than it. Germany's Ernst Lehner scored a goal against Austria in 1934 in just 24 seconds. Czechoslovakia's Václav Masek scored a goal against Yugoslavia in just 16 seconds in 1962, and the fastest goal in history was when Turkey's Hakan Şükür scored a goal against South Korea in just 11 seconds. It doesn't seem like that record is going to be broken anytime soon. Which player has won the World Cup the most? When it comes to the team with the most World Cup wins, Brazil is in the lead with 5 wins, but closely being trailed by Germany with 4. However, when it comes to players with the most World Cup wins, Pelé has won a total of 3 World Cups with Brazil, as he was in the team for the 1958, 1962, and 1970 World Cups. There is not a single active football player on the planet to have multiple World Cup wins, and beating Pelé's record, which spanned 12 years, seems almost impossible. Quickest red card. Even though most players would love to have any kind of record in the World Cup, there are certain records that aren't exactly the most graceful. Getting a red card is pretty much the worst sort of prize you can be given, especially on a big stage with millions watching. Even though red cards aren't exactly a rare sight at the World Cup, some stand out more than others. That brings us to the 1986 tournament in Mexico. It was a match between Uruguay and Scotland, and almost immediately after the start, Uruguay's Jose Batista would tackle Scotland's Strachan intentionally. With just 56 seconds on the clock, this was the fastest red card in the history of the World Cup. Player with the most World Cup goals. More than 2,000 goals have been scored in the 21 World Cups that have been played, the first being scored by French player Lucien Laurent. The all-time leading scorer is Miroslav Klose with 16 goals. R9 Ronaldo is just behind with 15, and players who could still potentially break this record are Thomas Müller, who has 10 goals but will most likely be playing his final World Cup in Qatar. Never doubt Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo, however, with Messi on 6 goals and Ronaldo on 7, and both most likely playing their last ever World Cup, it's looking very unlikely. Also showing how hard it is to produce on the world's biggest stage. Harry Kane has 6 goals from his only World Cup in 2018. If he produces well in Qatar at 29 years old, he could still make it on the plane to USA/Canada and Mexico in 2026. Definitely one to watch. Best finish by a debuting team. Since the FIFA World Cup first began back in 1930, a total of 79 different teams have qualified to play and compete in it. Only 2 countries have ever won the World Cup on their debut appearance. Uruguay won the very first World Cup, even though any team that would have won that year would have also held this record. Additionally, Italy also won the first World Cup they appeared in back in 1934. Since then, no debuting team has ever won the World Cup, and at this point, with competition increasing and most big countries having played in the competition already, it seems impossible that it'll happen again. Youngest and oldest players to feature at a World Cup. Norman Whiteside broke the previous record set by Pelé and drew immediate comparisons to fellow Northern Irish star George Best as a child, and was even scouted by the same person for Manchester United. Despite some early injury setbacks that would eventually end his career, he became the youngest player in World Cup history, which still remains to this day. No surprise the oldest player ever to play in a World Cup is a goalkeeper. Essam El Hadari was 45 years and 10 days old when he started for Egypt against Saudi Arabia in their final group game at the 2018 2018 World Cup in Russia. El Hadari played a combined 1,028 matches for club and country in a career that spanned 26 years, with over 300 appearances coming for Egyptian powerhouse Al Ahly. He goes down as one of the greatest players to play for Egypt, and a record which could be around for quite some time. Players with the most yellow and red cards. Red and yellow cards were first introduced at football showpiece event in 1970. Since then, there have been several infamous incidents involving high-profile players picking up cautions and sending offs. Zinedine Zidane was all about poise and finesse when he was on the ball. However, a gentle nudge was enough to set the man off. In his 12 appearances, the player received 4 yellow cards and 2 red cards, one of which was for a headbutt on Marco Materazzi in the 2006 World Cup final. Cameroon international Rigobert Song also has 2 red cards to his name, but only 3 yellows. The player with the most cautions in World Cup history, albeit with no red cards, is Javier Mascherano. He collected 2 at his first event in 2006, another 2 in 2010, 1 in a final defeat to Germany in 2014, and 2 in 2018. And speaking of cards, most cards in a single World Cup match. It was a World Cup match between Portugal and the Netherlands, and it was a mess. Within the first half of the match, 3 different players were already shown the yellow card because of their behavior. Things only got more tense as players tried to deliberately injure each other and cause nothing but absolute chaos. Overall, 4 red cards and 16 yellow cards were shown in the match, setting a FIFA record for most cards ever shown at a World Cup match. Let's hope this record never gets broken again. Most attended World Cup match. A good crowd can really make or break a football match. Even though today it's rare to find a stadium that could fit more than 100,000 people, this was not the case in the 20th century. Thanks to more relaxed safety regulations, stadiums would often overfill during big matches. The most attended World Cup match in history happened in 1950, when over 173,000 fans crammed their way into the Maracanã Stadium in Rio to watch Brazil take on Uruguay in the final. It's the most attended football match in general, and it's an impossible record to break in this day and age. Most goals in a World Cup match. When it comes to prestigious world records, there's one record that almost every player and team strives to have: the most goals in a single match. Even though multiple goals are common to this day, the biggest records for the most goals were all set last century. There have been 3 games with 11 goals: 6-5 to Brazil against Poland on the 5th of June of 1938, 8-3 to Hungary against West Germany on the 20th of June 1954, and 10-1 to Hungary against El Salvador on the 15th of June of 1982. But the biggest scoreline was when Switzerland and Austria played a 12-goal thriller in Lausanne in June of 1954. The 7-5 scoreline set a new record for the most goals scored in a FIFA World Cup game and hasn't been beaten since. Will we ever see 12+ goals in a single match? Maybe when Haaland's Norway qualify again. And that's a wrap for the football records that might never be broken. Which of these records do you think can be broken? Let us know in the comments below. As always, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and click the bell icon to be notified every time we upload more videos like this. See you in the next one!